So out of all of the characters in Season 1 of Arcane, Silco is by far one of the most intriguing. He is my personal favorite character in not only Season 1 of Arcane, but the whole show. Silco's story in Season 1 is very complicated. It's a story of a man using devious methods to accomplish a task greater than himself. A man that believes a certain amount of violence is necessary for peace. Silco in Season 1 is also a very complicated father figure. A man who is constantly manipulating his newfound child and tries to make her into his perfect image. But then you come to find out in his final few moments on screen that through all of this he did in fact love her, and that for all the problems and issues that she causes him, it doesn't really matter because at the end of the day, she's his daughter. Silco has one of the most complete arcs in all of fiction in my opinion. By the end of Arcane Season 1, you understand everything that makes this man tick from start to finish. He's powerful, he's intriguing, his dialogue is amazing. He is a character that touched the heart of many and had a very profound impact on not only the story of Arcane, but the fandom as well, igniting discussions about morality that would blaze onwards for years to come. And going into Season 2 of Arcane, if I'm being honest, he was the only character I wasn't worried about. His arc was already complete and it was practically perfect. So how could the writers go back in time and ruin a character that was already amazing? And somehow, to both my shock and disappointment, they found a way to do it. Silco does not get a lot of screen time in Season 2 of Arcane, with him only having a grand total of 6.5 minutes on screen, and not having any sort of dialogue for a third of it. So when discussing how the writers of Arcane found a way to destroy Silco's character, it really comes down to 3 crucial scenes. And when I use the word crucial, I'm not just talking about 3 things that are sort of important to Silco. I'm talking about 3 different moments that absolutely shatter the Silco we have in Season 1. Now the first thing that I want to bring up that I'm going to tie in later is the letter that Vander wanted to give Silco and never got the chance to. At the start of Act 2, Jinx and Violet find this letter that Vander wrote to Silco and never got to bring to him. And it's just basically one big I'm sorry for trying to kill Silco. And the reason that this letter is so disastrous is the writers actually believe that this letter would have worked and mended the relationship with Silco and Vander. Not only that, but they believe that if Silco received this letter, it would have put him on a right track, and he never would have committed the atrocities that he ends up committing in Season 1. And this just shows you that the writers of Arcane Season 2 fundamentally misunderstood Silco as a character. This letter that Vander wrote to Silco wouldn't have changed anything. Silco isn't going after Vander and trying to take control of Zaun because of a petty difference. He's not holding a petty grudge against Vander for trying to kill him, they have a major difference in philosophy. In fact, at the start of Season 1 Episode 3, Silco offers Vander a chance to join him, showcasing that what happened in the past between them is in the past for a reason and he wants to move forward. But he wants to move forward on his terms, with Vander agreeing with his ideology. But Vander doesn't agree, saying that he is just not that man anymore. And this I'm sorry note wouldn't solve any of these bigger problems. Now I've heard people make the argument that Silco would appreciate this, but I disagree. I think if anything, Silco would respect Vander more for doubling down on his action and sticking to what he believes in. I believe he might actually see this letter as Vander rolling over. Which brings us to my next point. One of the reasons Silco is going after Vander in the first place is because he's aware that he's working with Topside. And he finds this action absolutely disgusting. And this I'm sorry letter that the fandom and many of the writers of Arcane Season 2 believe would have fixed everything doesn't address any of these problems. I think in the best case scenario, Silco would go, thanks, but what now? We still have all these other issues we have to address. Now I usually like putting my videos in chronological order, but I really need to tie this in now. The alternate universe is why I find this letter so destructive. In the alternate universe, when Echo asks Silco and Vander why all of a sudden they're friends, Silco goes, the best thing you can do as a person is have the power to forgive. And this is just such a catastrophic line. In this alternate universe, it is implied that Silco received the letter, and after Vi's death, they are somehow able to mend their relationship. But herein lies the issue. As I've stated previously, the letter does not solve anything. And the writers of Arcane making it so that this letter solves so many problems destroys so much of what makes Silco such a great character in those earlier episodes. But moving on, I think the true worst thing that happens to Silco in Season 2 of Arcane is the Blisters and Bedrock scene. And this scene is just an absolute disaster for Silco from front to back, and here is why. In Season 1, Episode 3, Silco is absolutely hellbent on murdering all of the children, including Violet, who he would know is the daughter of his best friend. It also doesn't make any sense that he'd be criticizing Vander for taking in these children and insulting him about it if he knows the reason he's doing it is because he's on the hook. And you have to remember, Silco is not just an evildoer, he has very conscious reasoning behind his actions. More than anything, Silco respects people with large ambitions. He respects people that are willing to die for the cause, that are willing to fight for the cause. And you really mean to tell me he would now disrespect one of his best friends who died for the cause by trying to murder her children? Do you see what I'm saying? It doesn't really make sense. Beyond that, when he turns the corner and sees Powder for the first time, he doesn't seem to know her. He just says, "Hello, little girl." He doesn't seem shocked to be seeing a familiar face. He doesn't give any emotional response indicative of that he knows who this is. I've also seen countless people make the argument that the reason Powder jumps into Silco's arms is because she's familiar with him. But if that's the case, why on earth would he be so shocked when she does it? And if he truly did know who she was, he would immediately try to leverage the fact that she's familiar with him. Silco's entire arc that he goes through in Season 1 is a reflection of what Vander goes through in the first episode. It is a man coming to terms with the costs of his ambition, a man choosing to father a child that he does not know, and growing as an individual because of their adopted child and adopted love. And I believe the Blisters and Bedrock scene retcons a lot of this, because it sums up all of their complex journeys into they were just on the hook the whole time anyway. This wasn't something they chose out of their own free will, out of the goodness of their hearts. It's they promised something, they were on the hook, and they just had to do it to keep their word. Now, the last part of Silco's character that I want to discuss before ending this video is his final line to Jinx. Now, I will also be talking about this moment in depth in my future Jinx video, but I think it's important to bring up here regarding Silco as well. To put it in short, Silco basically tells Jinx that the only way to escape this violence is to just simply walk away. Now, I know in a very weird way, this isn't actually Silco, this is Jinx's contorted mind's conception of something that Silco would say, but in truth, my issue with this scene is this is just not something Silco would ever say to Jinx. So where is she getting this information? Where does she get this idea that this is something he would say? Silco was never one to walk away. He was always one to fight, always one to stand on your ambition. So do the writers of Arcane Season 2 believe that this is something he might have said to Jinx at some point in time? Because if so, that just shows another insane misunderstanding for how the character of Silco works. Especially consider the actual effect this has on Jinx, because this scene leads Jinx to doing something that I do not think Silco would have wanted for her. But yeah. Unfortunately, out of all of the characters that were killed by Season 2 of Arcane, this one was the most unexpected. This was the worst move they could have made. All they needed to do was just let him rest, and he would have ended a phenomenal character. But instead, they have to drag his corpse out of the river for fan service and member berries. And unfortunately, because of this, we're left with a far worse character than we would have had if they just left him alone. I will say though, as far as ignoring Season 2, this is the character that I'm going to ignore Season 2 the most with when I go back and watch Season 1 of Arcane. Because the character that we are presented with in Season 1, and the impact that he left me and the majority of the fanbase with, is very different from both the initial goals in creating Silco and the outcome of Season 2. This is a character that we were never really supposed to like, this is a character that was never really supposed to work, and this is a character they unfortunately ended up killing in the second half of their story. With that being said, I will always still have a soft spot in my heart for Season 1 Silco, and nothing will ever change that. It's just really quite unfortunate to see what he would end up becoming.